Each point in history is, in fact, not a fact. That observation, from founder M.H.L. Salieta, points to a structural flaw in how we record the past. Every historical event we study has been shaped by the individual mindsets, political pressures, and personal agendas of the people who wrote it down. Ignoring those subjective lenses has created a causality crisis in education. We teach students to memorize a timeline of isolated dates and names, but we failed to show them the invisible geographic and economic threads connecting those points together. Take two standard textbook facts. In 1453, the Ottoman Empire captures Constantinople. 39 years later, in 1492, Christopher Columbus sails across the Atlantic. We test students on these exact years in completely separate chapters, but the two events are a single chain of cause and effect. The fall of Constantinople severed Europe's overland trade routes to Asia. That economic choke point forced Spain and Portugal to seek an alternative sea route to the west, directly prompting Columbus's voyage. You cannot visualize that butterfly effect using the tools currently found in classrooms. Standard timelines only show when. Static maps only show where. They lack the dimensional mechanics to map out how an action in one hemisphere triggers a reaction in another. Textbooks compound this problem by flattening global complexities into a single, straightforward storyline. They present a clean sequence of events with a definitive beginning, middle, and end. This creates a massive educational blind spot. By presenting a single narrative voice, curricula fail to reveal who actually recorded the history, who paid them to write it, and what outcomes they wanted to justify. If a student doesn't know whether a chronicler was an eyewitness on the battlefield or a court official writing later to please a king, they have no framework to evaluate the reliability of the claims on the page. Grasping the actual why behind historical actions requires us to first decode the competing biases of the human beings who left us the records. EchoTrace closes this gap by replacing the static textbook with an interactive, three-dimensional navigation engine. The platform's first dimension is the x-axis. By freezing the timeline at a specific year, users can fly horizontally across different cities, examining simultaneous events happening at the exact same moment. Moving across the terrain in this way makes the physical constraints of history obvious. You can see precisely how the distance between a capital and a border fortress, or the elevation of a mountain pass, dictated military strategy and shaped trade networks. The second dimension is the y-axis. Here, you lock on to a single geographic coordinate and move vertically, descending through distinct historical eras, occupying the same patch of Earth. You might start by looking at an ancient foundation layer, like the complex civic administration and stone columns of Roman Jerash in the 2nd century. Descending through the timeline reveals how subsequent empires recognize the value of that specific geography, eventually constructing massive strongholds like the Crusader walls of Al-Karak directly over the older infrastructure. By integrating these horizontal and vertical axes, the platform transforms abstract dates on a page into a visible, physical web of cause and effect. The most critical mechanism kicks in when a student encounters a historical claim and asks, "How do we actually know this?" That question activates the z-axis. Diving into evidence reveals the author's metadata. You examine their specific profile, physical proximity to the battlefield, and visual tags flagging religious agendas. The neutral engine refuses to filter biases. Instead, it places opposing Crusader and Ottoman chronicles side by side, forcing direct evaluation of conflicting testimonies. True historical comprehension only emerges when we put all of these subjective, human biases into direct, transparent competition with one another. A tool with this level of academic rigor changes the conversation when you move from the student screen into the university boardroom. Building a system specifically engineered to expose systemic bias is a massive undertaking. It requires a level of verification that makes it far too structurally significant to operate as a simple, standalone consumer app. The business model reflects this scale. Universities are not buying a pre-packaged 3D map. They license EchoTrace as a B2B software-as-a-service institutional framework. Think of it as the JSTOR or GitHub of spatial historiography. Institutions pay to use the underlying engine, and then populate it with their own specialized regional research and historical corridors. EchoTrace sells the epistemically neutral architecture required to host, organize, and rigorously verify historical scholarship. But selling to universities presents a severe friction point. Institutional buyers are notoriously slow, and they are already accustomed to using basic, one-dimensional timeline tools that are entirely free. To cut through that friction, the startup deploys a direct wedge strategy. They bypass the administration, testing the prototype directly on students to capture hard data on engagement times and measurable breakthroughs in causal reasoning. When department heads are presented with irrefutable, quantified proof that their own students are actively demanding this interactive approach, it completely short-circuits the traditional, bloated institutional sales cycle. EchoTrace transforms individual student breakthroughs into globally scalable infrastructure. This shifts the classroom from rote memorization toward a mechanical understanding of how history actually unfolds.